Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So excited today. Obviously, we love to talk about the gut and the microbiome. We have like the veterinarian here all about the gut and the microbiome, Dr. Katie Woodley. Hi, Dr. Katie.
Hi, it's great to
Hi,
be
Dr.
here.
Katie.
Hi, Dr. Ian. So good to be here. Thanks for having
It's
me.
lovely to see you again
You're
and
just,
again.
she's just up the road from me, Dr. B. I don't know if you know that.
Yep.
I didn't know that. Well, how lucky are you?
That's right. We haven't taken advantage of it. We need to do a dinner. But she's up in Fort Collins. I live in Boulder and Colorado, and we're yeah, we're neighbors.
Yeah, I met you in Vegas though,
I
so
know. We're
not in
neighbors, but
Colorado.
we first met each other in Vegas. Isn't that the way it is?
Yes.
Vegas
And what
brings.
happens in Vegas?
Well, it was Super Zoo, so just for context, everyone.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it was great seeing you. And actually, we got to have dinner, kind of. We got to have a little bit of a meal together, and it was a really great event. But let's get into it. Let's get into the microbiome. Do you want me to start, Dr. Katie?
Yeah,
The
kick it
question?
off.
Okay. I know you could start, but what is on my mind quite a bit is the state of the microbiome, both human and animal industry. Is we've come a long way from all microbes are bad. We must kill all microbes at all costs on our skin, inside us. Everything must be sterilized. And then we've come the full other way, which is, but there's all these great microbes and you can take them in a pill and it's so easy and it fit right into this beautiful pharmaceutical model, this Western model, the so-called pill for every ill. So there is now this proliferation of there's a species, there's a microbe for specific ills. Now, this is true, and like all things that may not be perfectly true, there's a thread of truth in them. But and I'm getting somewhere, I promise. We know we don't know a lot. We know enough to be dangerous about the microbiome and to make some headway. We know that there are about 500 species in our dog's guts and about 1,000 subspecies of microbes. But we have a smaller tool set, a tool uh, box of those microbes that you can actually make in a production environment and bottle them or make them a powder or whatever. We're talking like, just a handful of them. And then if so that's in the treatment part. So you're comparing thousands to like, whatever there are 20 variety species of pills that are manufactured or probiotics that are manufactured. And then on the testing side, we can't test for all those thousands. We can't even test for hundreds of them.
Mm-mm.
So my question first, just to open up the conversation in everybody's mind is, what are we doing here with regards to testing and treating of the gut? Are we being honest with ourselves that we're able to go in a direction that's meaningful, or are we chasing our tails? Just to use the pun.
Great. So we could talk about this for the next year, but I love how you introduced it as like the germ theory versus terrain theory. And unfortunately, with the hygiene that we've gone through, especially with the crazy pandemic, everyone just had to obliterate microbes. All microbes are bad, and so I think that's really we're starting to, at least from a functional medicine perspective, shift away from that and understand that we actually need microbes in order to live. Like that's our entire microbiome, where we have all these different types of microorganisms that are essentially why we're alive. And they make us who we are, what we want to eat, how we behave, you know, and they're very, very important. And so there's been a lot of research, but of course, we don't know everything about it, and we probably never will. Now, the way that I approach it, so you're referring to like the probiotics, and, you know, I love how you said there's a pill for every ill. And this is not the holistic functional medicine approach to optimizing and even healing the root cause, which, you know, I teach a lot of pet parents about. And when we actually look at how do we optimize and look at the microbiome, it's not just necessarily the microbes, right? For one, if we're putting one single strain of probiotic or even 5 into the gut, there's going to be some other give and take, right? It's not just put something in and nothing else is unbalanced. But we're missing the bigger picture where we're actually looking at how does everything interconnect and work together? Because the microbiome is really, really important, but we can't have a microbiome if the rest of the body isn't working well, or if we have a lot of external toxins, those detox pathways aren't working, we have a lot of stressors and we're not managing the emotional health, or we have leaky gut and tons of inflammation. Things are not going to be digested well. The microbes aren't going to survive in that type of environment. So yeah, you can throw a bunch of probiotics in, but if you're expecting optimal health by focusing on one tiny little aspect, like, it's not going to work in the end. And so I think that's the shift we have to make when we're actually approaching our own health and our pets' health, is looking at that bigger picture and looking at it from a foundational perspective and the pillars of health. And then that's where you actually unlock the true healing and the proactive approach to your pet's care.
Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show. But you know that's too complicated, right?
It is.
You've gone from I'd rather, Dr. Katie, I want to just take a pill. I don't want to know about holistic. I don't want to know about all these emotional. So
I might not be for them then.
but this is so important, you guys, because if we know now, if your dog is perpetually bored, forget stressed out and sad and depressed, but bored, that can affect the biome negatively. And so if you just think about that for a quick second, it is this holistic, this is Dr. Billinghurst, I think, is going to probably use the C word, complex. And things that are complex, we don't mean complex in the word hard or difficult. We mean that the complexity is there, and all good things in nature and in health are complex. Really good health, really good nutrition is complex. So this solution that Dr. Katie just described is very complex, and as you can see, I'm very passionate about it. I just needed to interject, but Dr. B, what say you here?
Oh boy, oh boy.
Go.
Yes, I know. Well, Katie said it all, and I'm not sure that I can repeat it any better, except to say, if you're putting, I'm kind of thinking back to Chinese medicine and yin and yang and feed but you know, you can do acupuncture on an animal, but if the wrong chi is being put in, which is food, then the acupuncture will only work for a short time or not at all. If you're throwing in probiotics into an animal or a person and the food is incorrect, then again, they're not going to work. They've got to, it's this absolute synergy. Feed the right food, and actually feed the right food, and to a large degree, as I understand it, if it's raw and whole and has not been sterilized, and it's going to bring a lot of good stuff with it in the form of probiotics, in the form of healthy bacteria that are going to help seed the gut. And the food that you're feeding is then going to feed those microbes properly. And that's my very simplistic view. But I have a question for Dr. Katie at this point. When a person is born, and we're taking, or an animal, and they do a vaginal birth, so they're going to pick up their mum's microbes. They're very important. They seed the gut, let's put it that way, as far as I understand. To what extent do those original microbes, and do we know this, do they stay, and how important are they as a foundational set of microbes? Or are we looking at a constantly shifting pattern within the gut? That's one question, because I've read a few things which seem to indicate that that foundational set of microbes sits there. And if we take a lot of antibiotics, for example, that we sometimes diminish that, we can't get it back, and kind of like we never can. So I'm intrigued on your take on that, or am I asking too big a question that we don't have an answer to?
I think, no, it's a great question. And there are a lot of studies that show exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Ian, and that the mother's health is really, really important to that pet too. So those puppies that are being born vaginally, what is the mother's health? What does her microbiome look like? What types of foods has she been eating? Antibiotic usage, drugs, toxins in the environment, all those things are going to play a part for that. And there's studies that show, if they're lacking that diversity, or they're born, through a C-section and they're not exposed to all of that, that it can potentially set them up for diseases like allergies or atopic dermatitis later on. Now, I don't think we actually know if we obliterate that microbiome with antibiotics and drugs and toxins and all the things that can come into play that impact that microbiome, can we get it back? I want to believe that the body is really powerful at healing itself. And so, from what I've seen and from what I understand from the human side and also on the dog side, is that I feel like you can get it back. It's not easy. And it encompasses looking at all those different factors and, of course, feeding the proper diet. And then, of course, too, using fermented products that are going to have a lot more different types of strains of beneficial bacteria in it too, to help repopulate, making sure that we have a food source like your prebiotics to feed the good bacteria, and then removing the things that are going to inhibit that microbiome from replenishing too. So there's a lot, once again, it's complex. I like that term, complex. And I don't think we know 100%. I don't think we'll ever know 100% for all these things, right? You're like every year there, or every day, I feel like there's new studies coming out that show us a different way, especially with the microbiome. But the body's pretty amazing. When you remove the resistance to healing and we give it what it needs to repair itself, that's the key for like true optimal health. So I don't know if that helps or answers the question, but.
Well, I mean, the answer is we don't know.
What's come up during your as you spoke there, and there's been so much talk about epigenetics lately that we're not just there's not just a fixed set of genes that acts in a one way or another, but that it can be the way the genes respond and produce proteins varies according, for example, to the foods we eat and all sorts of things. But it's almost like as you're saying, from generation to generation, there's this effect of the previous generation's microbiome on this generation. So that too is rather like an epigenetic effect. And I don't know whether we could call it an epibiome effect, but it is kind of like coming through from mum. But the good news is, I think that you're right. I think it can be changed by the right food and maybe seeding it somehow with the right microbiome. And of course, we know there are studies to do that. In fact, I read or heard of a situation where, and so a lot of this stuff comes in and it just remains with me, but I don't know where it comes from because I either read it or somebody tells me. But there was a person who had severe dementia, and they did a microbiome transplant from somebody who was mentally exceedingly acute, and the results were absolutely amazing, apparently. And it's right across the spectrum of disease, where you can take the microbiome from a fat individual and put it into a thin one and convert them, and vice versa. So, I mean, they really are our masters in many ways. We are their slaves, it would appear. So we need to secure right masters of the bugs in our life, do we not?
It's like, we see so many anxious dogs, and I'm like, your microbiome's off. And that's we miss the mark so many times if we're only approaching it from a conventional medicine standpoint. These dogs go on anti-anxiety meds. Those then have longer lasting impact on vitamin, mineral, and nutrient absorption, leads to more health issues. And these poor animals it's a vicious cycle where they end up going on more drugs, when in reality, if we fix the microbiome, they'd probably be cured of their anxiety. Maybe, there's a behavioral component that needs training. And of course, it's not always as simple as that. But I've seen so many dogs where we treat the microbiome and we fix that, and they're like a brand new dog. It's amazing. And it's like that simple.
So, Dr. Katie, when you say you treat the microbiome, can you give us how do you treat the microbiome? Tell me about that. That's
The
fascinating.
complex version or the simplified version?
Somewhere in between.
Perfect. So this is where, as you've already mentioned, Dr. Ian, food is medicine, food is the foundation of health. So we need to be addressing the diet. So, if we're feeding a processed food diet like kibble, where can we shift things to optimize the nutrition to get them onto a more species appropriate diet? Usually that means, transitioning to raw. Sometimes it involves a kind of different, longer transition depending on how sick they are and what's going on in their gut, and other health conditions. But getting them onto a fresh food diet is always key. Now, I work with a lot of really sick animals where they have severe gut health issues. They're really, really sensitive to a lot of different things. And so really breaking it down and keeping it super simple. This is where I also follow like a 4R protocol, where we're essentially removing things like, where can we address the other pillars of health that are outside of the nutrition? So this is going to be removing toxins. This can look like, are we over vaccinating? Are we still using flea and tick preventatives? Where can we minimize the use of other medications that could be impairing us from actually healing that microbiome? Then also and of course, removing the foods that aren't allowing us to heal fall into that first R. Then we need to be looking at, where can we actually replace? So I find a lot of dogs, especially if they're older dogs or they have a lot of inflammation in their body, they've had a microbiome issue for a long time. We need to be using things to help them break down the food and actually digest it. So this can be looking at digestive enzymes or using whole food sources that are going to help with them digesting the food. So this is where I love using things like raw goat's milk. Is a great option for these animals. If they can tolerate some of the fermented foods, that's going to help also. And really replacing, or, comes into re-inoculating, and that's fermented foods. Once again, your Gussy Guts product is fantastic. Kefir, a lot of pet parents will make their own fermented products, which is super easy to do. So we're re-inoculating, we're getting more nutrients in, and then we're also repairing the gut lining and potentially repairing an overactive immune system. So this is where I tap into the power of herbs and other nutraceuticals. I love using things like slippery elm or marshmallow root to calm down inflammation, using things like L-glutamine, which is, a non-essential amino acid to help feed those gut cells, those enterocytes, is really, really important. Making sure I do testing too to see, are they like vitamin D deficient? Do we have zinc issues? Those are all really important for the immune system and healing that gut lining. Not everyone can do that. You don't have to do all the testing. It just helps kind of speed up the process sometimes and showcase where those deficiencies are. But you can follow those principles. How do we remove inflammation, reduce inflammation, heal the tight junctions, and then, of course, get those toxins out, support detox pathways is really, really important. That's a key component. The gut is a detox pathway. And so if things aren't moving well, they're backing up, they're moving too quickly, if the bile is off, if that gallbladder is not working well, the liver's not working well, those toxins get recirculated. It increases inflammation in the body. So we can use things like burdock, dandelion root, milk thistle. Those are great natural options to help open up those detox pathways, support those systems, and get the toxins out to take less pressure. Remember, removing resistance from healing that microbiome. So those are some of like the key principles that I follow when I'm working with patients. So that way we make sure that we're hitting all of those areas to really set them up for optimal healing.
Wow, you've just said an absolute whole lecture. What a mouthful. That's brilliant. Thank you. I'm sure everybody out there will appreciate that. I know I do.
I do. So yeah, I have like 20 questions. Okay. So let me ask you let's go right to the symptoms. What you prescribe the cure, the addressing those issues. What do those symptoms look like?
Yeah.
Bile and all that stuff. Like, what does that look like to the average person with a dog they love?
Yes, this is a great question. So what are you going to see with your pet? So your dog could have bilious vomiting. They vomit in the mornings before they eat, not normal. Something's going on. So they're bringing up the yellow bile usually. They can have itchy skin. So skin issues, allergies, ear infections, chewing at the paws, that's usually a gut issue. Behavior problems, as I mentioned before, so anxiety, gut health issue. Anal gland problems, of course, the normal vomiting, the diarrhea, gassiness. Gassiness is not normal. A little bit of gas, that's fine. But I can always tell whenever I ask a client, is your pet gassy? By their response, I know immediately if that dog has a problem because they'll usually laugh and say, yeah, he clears the room. So those GI symptoms, but also to the skin issues, the recurring chronic ear infections, the itchiness, the anxiety behaviors, their cognitive decline also too. I want to look at the gut because there is a huge there's the gut brain axis with that connection with the vagus nerve. So all of those symptoms, I honestly think like every single condition, you should be looking to the gut, but specifically if you are experiencing those symptoms with your dog, you definitely need to assess the gut.
And it may tell me if I'm right in this statement. It may not directly be the gut in the symptom you're seeing, but there's this nexus. It's almost like it's the highway that everything, if you live in a place with a bridge that you have to get to the other town, you have to go through this bridge. That's the gut. So if your dog is having, let's say, the chronic ear gunk and problems, yes, absolutely, you're looking at the gut, and it also might be that the gut caused something else to be out of balance. So we have to appreciate this complexities. Wouldn't you say that's true, Dr. Katie?
100%. I mean, this is also too where people run into trouble, where they're just treating one thing and expecting everything else to resolve. I mean, you've also got microbiomes elsewhere. So you have a skin microbiome too that's being dysregulated if you have a gut microbiome issue. So you can get the gut right, but then if we haven't addressed the dysregulation in the skin, and that can come from, are we getting enough omega-3s? Are we healing the transdermal barrier? Like, what else is going on there? Do we have this is where, don't focus on the microbes, but if we have an overgrowth of yeast, have we addressed that? The secondary pathogens. There is a time and a place, and there's a lot of natural remedies we can use for that. But we do have to, this is where people get stuck, is we miss the forest for the trees.
Yep.
We just focus on the one thing, and we forgot that there's this entire complexity of how everything else is interconnected. We do a lot of heavy metal testing with hair tissue tests. And I can tell you, it's amazing when we see a pet come to us with a chronic health issue, the amount of times we see heavy metal problems that haven't been addressed through opening those detox pathways. And then once you do that, it makes healing so much easier. But you wouldn't know. How would you know that without doing some of those tests?
Right. So if I look at every customer support ticket we have, every single one. I answer a lot of them also. And we get a lot of this. My dog it's a lot of it's yeast, because that's a big thing on Instagram right now. And I'm convinced that less than 50% of these people have yeast problems, because
Not always yeast. It's not always yeast.
No, it's just a convenient, wonderfully, those nasty yeast, and people diagnose from these commercials they see, and these, some of these companies that are trying to, here's the thing. The most expensive thing a company can do is educate. When you try to change people's minds and educate them and have them understand complex situations, it's incredibly expensive to do. So most companies don't do it. So what they do is they just go, hey, if your dog's paws smell like corn chips, your dog has yeast. And so you go, oh, okay, let me smell my dog's paws. And oh my gosh, it's got great. I've just diagnosed, and I didn't need a vet. But you need a great vet. You really need a great vet, because these systems, how they interconnect and they work together, are so important to understand and look behind. What you don't know is so much more than what you do know, and what we all know. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm so interested in this topic, and I reach out to all these great vets all the time. I never can think that I know what's going on. I wish I could, but you can't know what's going on with your pet all the time. So anyway, back to my bridge theory. So everything goes through the microbiome. Is that kind of what we're visualizing? We want to get to the next town on the other side. The biome, it's like all roads go through the microbiome, kind of. Is that?
I would say so. I mean, I agree with that, because you have the connection with the immune system. You've got all your nervous system going in. You've got it connects to every system in the body. So I think it is fair to state, your gut microbiome, from the mouth all the way to the rear end is very, very important for improving or proactively preventing disease.
Can I ask a very practical question here? If we've improved the gut microbiome because we've got a dog with really itchy, nasty ears, have you ever done a microbiome transplant directly into the ears?
That's a great question. So,
After you fix the gut, I mean.
yeah, I mean, there is some things that I've been playing around with some clients, and then also to a dear colleague who she's a groomer, and she's very proactive and educating, and she's actually playing around with this too. Now, ironically, just was talking with some of my community about, spraying a probiotic spray on the skin when you have itchiness and allergies. So of course, the ears are a connection to the skin. So my question would be, why wouldn't it work when you're doing that? I would combine it with some other things like anti-inflammatories and some other skin soothers to help with that. But there is preliminary evidence that it does work. And it makes sense because of that microbiome that is there, and it is dysregulated and we need to improve it.
Well,
And the point that you may use it, and the order of things here is possibly important, I would imagine. You're getting the diet right. So, and you've got, hopefully the poos are coming out nicely. So you feel the microbiome's pretty good. Your ears are still gunky, but you've treated them with antibiotics and it's cleared up. Now, at this point, it would be nice, I would suspect, and I'm only guessing because I haven't done this and I haven't been in actual practice for a while myself. This is the time would be to reseed those ears with a swab dipped down into a healthy dog's ears and taking out as much as you could, and then perhaps putting it in the ears that you've just cleaned out and literally cleaned out of microbes, virtually, I guess, with some shotgun therapy or whatever you happen to use to fix the ear situation temporarily. So you've got the gut fix for hopefully, because you've got the diet right and hopefully the microbiome is improved, but you've got this local problem you have then addressed with conventional medicine, and now it's time to, it's a bit like kids with leukemia or whatever, they take all the bone marrow out and replace it. So it's kind of be like a replacement microbiome for those ears. I don't know whether you could do the same even with paws, if you could get a spray of something that you've harvested from somewhere. I'm only just thinking now, talking to you, listening to what you're saying and following on from our conversation, your thoughts on those sort of approaches.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? We're doing it with fecal transplants, so why wouldn't it work? And also, too, you made a key comment there that I want to reiterate because it's really important. Because I find that when a lot of pet parents go down like the holistic realm, we tend to say we can never use drugs ever again. And you mentioned clearing up the infection with like a topical antibiotic. So I just wanted to repeat that because I agree 100% with that. And it will help your pet feel so much better while you're healing the rest of the body. So I think that was like a key thing I just wanted to reiterate. I know that won't sit well with some people, and that's okay. But
Can I say at that point too, Katie, that I have never said I'm a holistic veterinarian. I've always said I'm just a veterinarian. I'm conventionally trained, but I want to use whatever I can find that works together, because I understand that modern medicine has saved my life, and I believe it saves animals' lives too. We can't dismiss it. We must use every tool in our armory to fix things. So we must be sensible about these things.
yes. And holistic, the definition of holistic does not
Yes,
mean that you don't use the other things,
yes,
right?
I know.
The true
And
definition. And that's why I love
I always
that.
thought that I was holistic anyway, but in a totally different way, more
Yes.
WHOL rather
That's
than
what I was saying,
HOL.
holistic with a W. That's what I
Yeah.
always say.
That was a marketing blunder. Whoever started the holistic movement, they forgot the W, because that's
Yep.
what it's about. And it's about more tools in a tool belt.
Yep,
Yeah, not
definitely.
less.
Yeah, and it's exactly right when we are treating, skin infections and ear infections. It'll be interesting to see if we see more of that, especially with all the research that's coming out for the, pro microbiome, because it makes sense to do something like that.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably take a little while for it to come, but when you think about, a lot of my colleagues use ozone therapy to help kill off the biofilm, right? And so, we're setting up a healing environment, so it makes sense. Why don't we seed the good bacteria back into, especially that ear, especially for these dogs that have chronic ear infections? Yes, we need to heal why it happened in the first place, making sure the diet's right and the gut microbiome is optimized.
Yep.
But then we also need to heal those other local microbiomes too.
Dr. Katie, you for sure should be testing this ear seeding thing, because, I don't know if you caught it. I know you had a copy of we came out with a magazine called Dog Microbiome Magazine. Quick plug for it. You could go look for it for free online. And Dr. Margot Roman did, of all things, a urine transplant. So we know about fecal. She did a urine transplant and got these incredible results. It's in the article she wrote. My point is, I think there is so much we do not understand here and that we can benefit from. And it takes somebody with both a science and an art mind to bring these two together, because I think you have to be thinking you have to be really pro magic of healing, magic of nature, the magic of what can actually happen. This microbiome is like, it's as mind-blowing as the galaxy, as the cosmos. And it's also just about as well understood. So I think, having people like you who are experimenting and trying, and I think good things are going to come from that.
Well, and what's neat too is that we have companies that are also now testing other areas other than just the stool tests.
Yeah.
So it makes things like that potentially a lot easier because there's like, a little bit of uncomfortableness. Are we seeding the right types of bacteria into this
Yeah.
ear, right? We don't want to create harm with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so there are, multiple factors that you have to think about, but it's definitely, I'm glad you brought it up, Ian, because it plants seeds on like where can we like shift and adjust like our treatments and not staying in the box just because we're limited by the small amount that we do know, and it keeps us stuck versus thinking outside the box and where can we help support the body and truly healing it.
Yeah. Wow. When I think of microbiome, I think of, parasites, protozoa. I think of virus, fungi. So do you think of it that way? Do you like, what is your perspective on those other things? 'Cause we always focus on like bacteria, but what about the other guys?
We need them. Like there's beneficial yeast and fungi and they're all necessary. I always refer to it, it's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so if you remove one thing, something else is going to grow in place of that and it's going to create dysbiosis or imbalance. And so it's once again, it goes back to everyone like Candida gets such a bad rap, but it's like we
Yeah.
need it. It's
Yeah.
part of the system.
Yeah.
And it's there for a reason. And also, too, like, let's be real, we all have parasites living in us. So if you try to kill all the parasites, you're probably going to wipe out your microbiome. And once again, you're chasing your tail. You're chasing the wrong thing. The question is have you created a system that can live happily together?
In harmony.
Right? Yes. And
Yeah.
that's the key shift we have to come from in order to it's the germ theory once again versus terrain theory, where everything has a place and is needed, but it's a focus on how do you optimize the system so they're all working together, versus trying to remove everything and sterilize it. It doesn't work.
Uh,
You wipe out the microbiome and you sterilize it, you die.
Yep.
You can't live.
Do you know? I don't know the names of these. There are indigenous people in the world that they're not getting cancer. And I'm sorry I don't recall this article, but they've tested them and they have certain parasites that we don't have. And there is this theory and study in that it's these parasites that they're living in harmony with that are keeping them cancer free. Do you have any thoughts about that, or have you looked into that at all? Or
I've lived it. So personal story, right?
wow,
TMI, but I got into
no,
like the gut health space
Mhm.
because my husband developed an autoimmune disease, IBD, a decade ago. And he has done every functional medicine test and all the things. And it's fascinating. Every test, he'd do a parasite test, and it wasn't your traditional parasite test. It was actually working with a specific parasite human functional doctor. They're actually in Denver, this is all he does. And he uses different technology to identify different types of parasites and fungi and all the things.
Wow,
Every single test, he'd always come back with a parasite. The one time he didn't come back with a parasite, he actually had a massive flare up. And I'm like, I don't know, right? I can't say. causation or what correlation doesn't equal causation.
Yep.
So, but I was like, there's a
So
reason those parasites are hanging out.
the parasites, a helminth, is that what we're talking about?
Oh, all sorts of fun parasites, protozoas, like
Oh, okay,
Giardia. Oh, all sorts of
right.
things. Entamoeba, histolytica. Like he was having a party in
Okay.
his gut.
Right.
Was
So
he was
Wow.
he was he drinking from a stagnant pond?
I mean, I don't have them, and that's what I said. I was like, "What's happening here?" And then improvement, and then all of a sudden they were gone, and then massive flare up. And so it's fascinating. It goes back to like removing the things and being able to. Don't get me wrong, like there are certain pathogens and parasites we do
Sure.
not want living in us that can create a lot of, GI inflammation.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so fascinating. And we actually talked about it where I was like, I think they were actually there and causing your immune system to focus on them versus to redirect onto your gut lining. And
Yeah.
there's, in the human realm, they're actually giving people parasites to treat autoimmune disease and redirect. So 100%, I do think that there is something to that with the tribe. I can't remember the name of the tribe. I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
where they're it's acting as kind of like a decoy and your body's not reacting to it's like overreacting and being overstimulated with itself and creating that autoimmune type reaction. Now, what comes from it, I don't know. But I also know too, I believe, so Dr. Odette Suter, who's amazing, who I know you know very
Yes,
well,
she is.
she talked and lectured at the Holistic Vet Conference about the gut. And I believe she mentioned too, I think she was referring, don't quote me on this, but I think she was referring to that same study where we talk a lot about Akkermansia and the importance of that in the human microbiome, but I don't believe they actually had that bacteria, which
Mm.
seems so important for us. So once again, it goes back to like, let's learn the things, sit with them, and continue to learn because it's fascinating when you look at these different cultures. And I think it relates too to our dogs, and looking at the different environments that they live in. And then once again, feeding them from like a food therapy perspective, from Chinese medicine, giving them what their body needs in the different environments that they're in. And we'd probably see, with Dr. Ian and myself, like pets tolerate different foods when you're in different ecosystems also, and they're going to be exposed to different bacterias and bugs and all different things too. Now that's my theory. But it makes sense when we start looking at the human data that we have also. It probably translates over to our dogs too.
Mm.
I'm just
Well,
thinking about all of that, Dr. Katie. I attended years ago now a postgraduate seminar in Sydney, and I think it was a United Kingdom immunologist, and he was talking about just the fact that years ago people would have to, and it was said they'd have to eat a pound of dirt in their childhood to get their immune system functioning properly. Anyway, he talked about autoimmune disease, and by wiping out the parasites as we do using constant worming, that may be a cause of a lot of the autoimmune disease that we do or see. And the other thing, as you spoke, yes, and he spoke of this targeting theory, whereas the immune system has something to target on. When it doesn't have that, it'll target itself. But there's also another aspect here that I would suspect that whatever parasites we carry are producing postbiotics that are having an incredible effect that we don't even understand. And they may be doing all sorts of things that are anti-cancer, for example.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's this whole system where don't try and, you have to have this holism, and it's a healthy holism where everything is in balance. And it's doing so much more, obviously, than we would ever understand at this point. And as I was saying, could ever possibly understand. It's too complex. It's a cybernetic complexity way beyond our even the most best computers that we have.
but that's not a bad thing. That people should embrace
Yes.
there's a magical world there, and you can relax into it and go with the wonder and work with great people like Dr. Woodley that will guide you slowly into the process, but don't go it alone. Don't try to get overwhelmed by the world of the microbiome if that, perplexes you. We tell everybody all the time, we're going to start referring people to you, Dr. Woodley, with your Dr. Woodley has a gut health program, Better Gut Health Program at her website. We're going to start pointing people to you because we have so many people that want to oversimplify, and therefore they're missing so many things. And so anyway, just real quick, back to the subject. I want to say this, the protozoa, don't you think there also is some value in them sequestering like toxins and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's why usually when you do a dewormer, how many pets get diarrhea?
Yep.
Like, you just killed everything, and now they released all the toxins
Oh,
and heavy metals, and, it's like there's so much we don't know, but once again, why are they there?
yeah,
Like, why were they put there? I don't have the answer for that, but there's a purpose for them.
yeah,
And it just comes down to, we don't know everything, and it goes right back to the very beginning, trying to destroy and take out everything. It's not working.
yeah,
It's making pets more sick. It's making humans more sick. It's making our agricultural system more sick. So we have to shift that and look at how do we nurture this and how do we come together as this ecosystem and create, once again, that harmony where everything thrives together.
that's
Mm.
great. Dr. Katie, how much about you just were talking about the agricultural system. How important do you think it is, um, the soil health of your meat, what it's on top of, and the food it eats, which is the grass usually, and the soil that your food is grown in? How important is the microbiome of the soil?
Oh, there's a couple books people should read about that. I mean, the big thing is like the Roundup that's being used, so glyphosate. Now, the soil or it did, it's being devastated. And so soil is becoming dirt. Soil should be a living microorganism. Once again, another like our gut, full
Yeah,
of different types of microorganisms working together.
yeah,
And what's happening is that, through, we're not using regenerative agriculture practices. So we're using monoculture. That means we're planting the same plants and crops year after year. And then we're also using, I mean, this could be a whole nother talk, but the GMOs, so genetically modified organisms, where they can be sprayed heavily with your glyphosate and Roundup. Now, the problem is that is actually a antibacteria. So what it's doing is it's killing the soil. It's killing the microbes in the soil. So not only are we putting a toxin in, that it also targets certain pathways in your microbes in your gut. So it's taking out your microbes too. It's killing the nutrients in the soil, killing the microbes. And now what's happening, and we're seeing this. So Dr. Stephanie Seneff talks about this in her book, Toxic Legacy, which I highly recommend everyone read. What's happening now is we're ending up with nutritional and vitamin deficiencies in our food. And so, yes, food matters, but this is where now, yes, we can feed these beautiful foods, but we also have to be cognizant that the whole farming system is being impacted by what we're doing agriculturally. That's then going into your pet's food bowl that could be compacting and impacting what's happening with the symptoms that we're seeing with the dogs. So it's once again a complex situation. I think the resolution or what we need to come from that is people educating themselves about that, and learning what does it mean. Food on our plate, great, but where did it come from? What was the process? And being more aware of that, and how were the like farm animals raised? What went into them? What was the food source? What's going into the soils? And how can we support farmers that are doing the regenerative agriculture and support them? That's how we start changing the broken system. And that will help your dog, and that will help improve the nutrition that goes into your dog, that then also improves the microbiome. So it's comes full circle. Once again, it's that whole ecosystem. So external and internal.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well,
Well
yeah,
said.
right. Yes, brava. We are coming out with, as of today, it's not been announced, but by the time this goes live, we're coming out with a treat called Guttables, Gussy's Guttables, and it's 100% regenerative ranched.
Yay!
Yeah, White Oak. Our partners are White Oak Pastures, and it's a joint venture with them. And we're coming out with one protein first, and then we'll probably come out with 2 more proteins. And we use raw organic Manuka honey, and then we have a blend of our fermented foods that we put in. So it's 3, even though our fermented blend is several ingredients, it's 3 big collective ingredients, and it makes up the medallions that we make. So we're very bullish on using Gussy's Gut to educate and bring in purchase regenerative ranched products, organic, biodynamic, regenerative produce, and support farmers. And we're doing a lot more direct with farmers. So I'm a huge proponent of knowing farmers, going to your farmers market, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye, getting to know them. You want these people feed you, and you really want that to keep you healthy, and you want to know them, and you want to patronize them, and you want to pay the true cost of food. Because what happens is these other companies that Dr. Katie just mentioned, they're factory farms, and they're making these, they have these massive operations because they want to make food cheap. But what they do is they externalize all the costs, and some of those externalizations are on us in the form of healthcare. So they get to make things cheap and fast and easy, and we get to have, $2 hamburgers at wherever. We get to have, a bunch of romaine, a batch of romaine that might be $1.39. But the truth is that those are very nutrient deficient. They're not as healthy as the real thing, and one that isn't sprayed and isn't factory farmed, and the soil that it's grown in isn't totally depleted because it's just over and over. You know what it's like? It's like, people will understand this. A factory farm is like a breeder that breeds their dog over and over and over and over and over again, doesn't care about its health. They just want puppies. That's all they want. And that is what do we call that? We call that puppy mill, right? That's what these big industrial and agricultural operations are. And we're getting a bad product. We're not getting a healthy product that we're putting in our gut. So food, how important is food? Is that the most important thing probably that you can think of to start with?
Yeah, and it can be one of the most simple.
Yeah.
Food is the foundation of health, going back thousands of years. It's always been that way, whether you're looking at Chinese medicine, food therapy, looking at Hippocrates, food really, really matters. And we've gotten so far away from what real food is. So I love that you brought that up, Rob, because I think a lot of people just don't know. They don't know where the food comes from, and they don't hear about that. So we just assume it's healthy.
And you're talking about human food, but just think about then dog food, which
It's
is
not
even
even human
more.
food, it's feed grade.
It's not even food from my perspective.
Well, it's not. It's actually technically, here in the States, you have human grade and you have feed grade. So food
Yeah,
grade, feed grade, they are not the same thing. It's not even fit for human consumption. And
it's not even.
I didn't know that as a vet when I graduated. I had no idea. And
Why
so,
would you? They don't
yeah,
teach you.
they don't teach you. So, I was doing the best that I could with the knowledge I had at the time. And as soon as I learned that, I was appalled. And most people and veterinary colleagues, they just don't know that that's what's going into the food that's being used. I wouldn't even feed that's being used for their pets, which is contributing to all the explosion of health issues that we're now seeing today.
Absolutely. And interesting, you've talked about, Rob, external costs. How did you put that? So
Yeah.
I'm not even sure the processed food is all that cheap, but anyway, assuming it is.
Not anymore.
No, I mean, people come to me, especially prescription diets, right? Don't even, that could be another talk. But your prescription diets, like you have a large breed dog, they're paying $100 a bag and they're going through it in a couple weeks and it's not even working and it's creating more health issues down the road. So it's not cheap.
Which are those external costs? They're externalizing the cost, which is all that veterinary care and emotional cost. You guys.
Yeah. Well, and like none of us, dogs are such great, they hide their weaknesses. So we could have a dog that's walking around feeling not so good, not feeling great. But as far as we can tell, they don't have eyebrows. We don't see them, grimacing. We want them to be really well, and we want them to feel great when they get up. We want their joints to feel great. We want them to feel alive. And that's what I want. So I look beyond just like, well, my dog looks good. It's at a good weight. It doesn't seem hungry. Like those are very low bars for health. That's not health,
It's just being alive.
It's
To be
barely
honest, like, yeah, I mean, you're breathing. The
Yeah.
thing here's a really easy way to see if your pet is feeling their best, and
Oh, good.
it's a really fast transition usually that you will notice is just commit to a week of a fresh food, non-processed diet with your pet. Like dogs respond so well and so quickly to fresh food. Hear it all the time. Oh my God, his coat changed. He's got so much energy. And I'm like, it's been a week. So it just shows you that, wow, they weren't feeling as healthy. I'm sure, Dr. Ian, you've heard this from your clients through the years when you've transitioned them onto a raw food diet. It's the first thing you hear is they have more energy.
Yes,
And then
that's
you
right.
hear their coat changes and then all the other flow on effects from that. And then they go, wow, what was in that other food that was making them not feel good? And then they start questioning it. So this is where if you can start adding in fresh food, less processed, there's, great options with Gussy's gut products and what you're coming out with, which I'm so excited to share with my clients. There's a lot of great options that don't break the bank and will give you back health for your pets and reduce veterinary costs. And also too, as Dr. Ian said, that emotional worry and staying up all night and like that is taking a toll on your own health.
Yep.
And there's ways through it with a lot of the great quality products that are now accessible to pet parents.
Yeah, that's great. And for people who I know you work with us and to talk to your clients about learning raw through Dr. Billinghurst. For those that are interested, Dr. B has a course to teach you how to feed raw. And that URL is DIYpethealth.com. And you can use the code Dr. Katie to get a discount on that course. It's an incredible course. We won't go into that here. We're having fun talking about the microbiome, but you can learn about food. Tell us about what would you say to folks that are transitioning and what you hear about their resistance to learning or understanding about raw food? What is your experience with those folks that are, trying, that want to, but they don't know where to begin?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fear, right, that comes up because especially with a lot of my clients, they're trying to talk to the vet about raw food. And there's so many myths surrounding like raw food is bad. You're going to harm your pet. You're going to kill yourself. Like these are things I hear every day, which we know is absolutely crazy. Right.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunately the rhetoric that's being told to them. So this is where also too, another big fear that comes up is I'm going to mess them up. I'm going to create an imbalanced diet. I'm going to be missing nutrients, right? And this is why I love that, Dr. Ian, you made a course that actually breaks it down, because the other thing too is the cost. People are always concerned this is going to cost a lot more. But when you learn how to put together these diets and you see how simple it can actually be, and also too, like going to your local farmers and getting deals on the meats and the organs and like the leftovers from the butcher, you can actually make it really affordable and you save
Yes.
money. And you're going to save money long term on your vet care because your pet will be healthier. So this is why it's so important, like, that there's fears, there's concerns, utilize the resources that are there, like this course, where you can learn how to do it yourself. And Dr. Ian's like one of the main reasons I got into raw and felt comfortable recommending it to my clients years ago, because I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to screw something up and then I'm going to create health issues. So I've been there too. And it was so nice to have those resources to reference back to and see the results that Dr. Ian has gotten. And now I see all the results that help heal pets. And that's why these courses are so important, because so many people just get stuck, they get fearful, and then they take no action, and then they stay in the same spot that they were in before. So it's definitely, don't let your fear hold you back. Utilize the resources that are there from the experts that have been doing this for decades and decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautifully said again.
Bravo again. Well, there's good and bad news. It's the same news. The bad news is that our dogs can live without certain nutrients or many nutrients for a pretty long time. Like, you won't recognize those deficiencies for a long time, some very long time. That's the good news, is that you don't have to worry that much about it short term. You don't have to worry about it on a daily basis, that every single nutrient is in every single meal. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for almost 25 years through Dr. B, and my dogs have never been sick. They've never been ill from, I've never been ill from, I've handled organ meat. Gosh, in the beginning, I used to handle brains. I used to give my dogs brains, and it was disgusting. It's just hard to find, and I don't need to give them brains. I give them other organs now. But the bad news is that the pet food companies know this all too well. And so they're not in any big, what they're doing is it's like fortified, Weber's white bread. Remember that? Like in America, we have Weber's bread, and it was fortified. And they would tell you, that, oh, don't worry, it's got all the vitamins in it, because the junk that we made it with doesn't have any nutrients. So we had to add it in. That's what happens with pet food, basically. And so your pets aren't necessarily that they're not in any danger of, being nutrient deficient because a certain supplement is not in the raw food. It's going to come from the meat, if you use really good quality meat, or organs. One of the best ways to get vitamin A, as an example, is liver. Most people don't know that. So, and it's a really good form of vitamin A. And all foods, that's why we at Gussy's Gut, we do all food sources, all fresh food sources, and we ferment them. It's your body and our animals' bodies get to say, you know what, I don't need all this selenium. You know what, I don't need all this glutamine, whatever it may be. And I'll just discard it. I got enough. I'm totally fine. Isn't that right, Dr. B? Isn't that how you say it?
Feed your pets as you feed yourself, without thinking about it. But the background for yourself is you kind of know what humans should eat. Well, once you've done my course, you will definitely know what animals should eat. And it's all second nature. And if you feed food in evolutionary balance, if you feed the broad range of whole raw foods that an animal ate over evolutionary time, that its genome now demands, it's just food in approximate evolutionary balance, you cannot go wrong. There's a thing called homeostasis, and the body works with real food to take what it needs out of that real food. Now, the only small caveat is, as Dr. Katie was speaking about, some of our really terrible foods today that we're producing in factory farming may not be as good as they used to be. But I think even then, the better news is that that stuff, even if it's not organic and obviously and regenerative farm, is the best. But whatever you can get in your local area and that you can afford of real food is 1,000 times better than feeding that synthetic, fake, industrial food. Excuse me, my voice is starting to go. I've got to get my Manuka honey into me. And that's
Yeah.
not Manuka honey, by the way. I had it yesterday, but it hasn't got it in that water. But anyway, that's all you need to do. And this course tells you how to do it. And we also talk about the microbiome, not quite as articulately as well spoken as Dr. Katie, but I do mention the broad range of fact that don't sterilize your food. The food that you have that's healthy will contain microbiomes, and it will seed the microbiome properly, in very simple terms. And it will seed and feed the microbiome, real food, in evolutionary balance. And then if you put in some, and that includes, by the way, we talk about fermented food as part of that evolutionary balance. And so a great supplement, of course, is Gussy's gut.
And Dr. Katie, actually Dr. B was talking about kids eating dirt, or pound of dirt or something. And it's sort of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of true. The best news is that our dogs are eating dirt all the time. I mean, it's either on their ball or their sticks or their grass or whatever. So if you take your dogs out and they don't live in a concrete building and they're outside and they're getting exposed to the whole biome, air, water, dirt, they're getting like a nature's probiotic every single day. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing too, like, people are so scared of, like, the pathogens once again. Like, think about your dog burying its bone in the dirt, right? And it sits there for, like, a week, and they dig it up, and you're like, "Where'd that come from?"
Yeah.
Or even longer, and it's been fermenting in the soil of microbes, and then it's eating all the dirt, and, the other piece to this too, because this is just a big part of, like, the emotional health side of, like, getting outside, is, like, they're grounding. Like, they're getting, like, the energy
Yes.
from the earth, and
Yeah.
you don't get that if you never go outside. Like,
Yeah.
that's why we shouldn't put our pets in a little bubble and try to protect them. They need to go and explore and experience and get those microbes, and, there's so many studies too, with the kids eating dirt, that if you don't grow up in the countryside or with a pet, kids unfortunately are more at risk of developing allergies or asthma down the road. And that just shows you how important the environment and that ecosystem is for us to be exposed to it. So yeah, eating dirt's not a bad thing. Just make sure if you're going to eat dirt, make sure your dog didn't just poop on it, right? Like, be smart, but it's really, really important for all of us, and especially dogs, to reseed once again, especially with the way the world is now, to get out there and ingest it.
Yeah.
Just be careful of those paths where the council has sprayed the grass with
Yes.
glyphosate.
Yes. I mean, that's the big thing. We have a lot of spray in our area. I lost a dog to a brain tumor. And I guarantee you, once again, correlation does not equal causation, but I have a feeling it played a big part in that. And that's where, still get your pet outside, but be aware of what's going on. And also, too, use your tools and resources to help your pet detox.
Yeah.
So there is still a way to not live in fear, to get outside and still expose them to the microbes. Even if you do live in a higher level of possible toxins, once you're aware of something, we can always do better. So that's definitely something that I always share with clients, because I've experienced it myself, and I still take my pets outside. I just know that I need to detox them more if I do that, to remove those toxins.
That's great. On a personal level, just aside, how do you feel about, so here's my philosophy on viruses as part of the microbiome. So I believe in going out and exposing myself, but I don't want to be sick. I like to be productive. So here's what I do. This is just personal, and I want to just see what you think. So I go out, I'll go to a, crowded movie theater or this or that. And, there'll be some people sneezing and coughing, and, it kind of makes me wince a little bit, because I love to be productive. I do not want to be in bed sick, but it's my view, and the view I've gotten this from other doctors that I respect a lot, that getting exposed, but maybe not infected and fully succumbing to an illness and then therefore being bedridden. But being exposed is a way to keep your software of your body or your biome upgraded and in tune with the environment, because viruses are an indication, they're a sign of the times, they're the environment that you live in. And so you therefore always want to be staying in step with it. Does that sound right to you?
That's how I live my life.
Okay, good.
I think the big thing too is, once again, it goes back to germ theory versus terrain theory.
Yeah.
What are you doing on a daily level to optimize and support your systems? And so if you do come into contact, it doesn't mean that, you'll never get the flu or you'll never get a cold. But what I do notice, because I travel a lot and I love traveling and I love going to different places around the world. My husband's, I went to vet school in New Zealand. My husband's family's still there. Like, we travel a lot. And that's really important for me. And I'm at a higher risk. I get it. But what can you do? Hydrate, get good sleep, take your supplements. Like, there's immune support supplements, the Manuka honey, straight from New Zealand. I forget. So, all those things, that's where I don't live in fear of potentially getting sick and limiting myself from the things that I love, because I know I have the tools and resources to combat it and support myself.
Yeah.
And so that's how, being smart, right, is important. If I'm sick, I'm not going to necessarily go out and expose everyone to me, right? But it's one of those things where, we have right now that respiratory illness going around with dogs in the US. Being smart about where you go, dog parks, things like that, not probably the best right now. But if you have to board your animal, like so many people, they have to board their pets during the holidays when we're recording this.
Yeah.
So if you have to be at a high risk, once again, it goes back to everything and the principles we talked about today, is supporting those foundations. So you're giving your pet the best chance that if they do get exposed to it, they can recover. And that is exactly, those principles are the same as I apply for myself on the human health side. We need to be exposed to things. Once again, you put yourself into a bubble, what's going to happen? You go out into the world, and if there's some crazy virus, which is a real possibility in the way the world is now, you're going to get really sick and not be able to handle it. If you haven't been seeing the sun, if you haven't been grounding yourself, if you haven't been exercising your immune system to make sure it's in a good standing. So I think it's really, really important. And it's been so helpful being on this journey, just learning, because it gives me tools so I don't have to live in fear. Doesn't mean that I don't know how my time's going to end on this planet physically. But, I have so many tools in the toolbox to support myself if I do come down with a virus or infection or whatever it is that, I come into contact with.
Yeah. Wow. That's very cool. Okay. So let's go back to your website, thenaturalpetdoctor.com. And then you have this program called the Better Gut Health Program, right?
Yep. We're making better guts with our program.
Good. And if I'm watching this and I'm curious about this, just from like A to Z, where does it take us from the beginning to the end?
So this program essentially helps pet parents. It does cover both cats and dogs who are experiencing gut health issues and skin health issues. So all like the leaky gut symptoms we talked about at the beginning, skin issues, allergies, ear infections, diarrhea, vomiting. It helps you break down what we were talking about with the frameworks to find the root cause and heal it through fresh food diets, using supplements when needed, to really help them get back to optimal health. So it used to be a 6-week program. So it's an intensive program. It's not a beginner program, but it really helps those pets that are, those pet parents that are stuck. They're not getting the results and they want to take it a bit deeper and learn about how everything is interconnected, but also have those frameworks to actually heal the root cause to get their pets back to health.
That's great. All right. Final words, Dr. B.
Well, I think this has been a most educational, what we call it, interview, talk, chat, discussion. Yeah, round table, sitting with a wonderful friend who knows so much. Thank you, Dr. Katie. I've just loved listening to you, and I'm sure everybody out there, as they listen, will love it too. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, like being here, and I appreciate you inviting me. My cat's going to join me for the final words. But I think too, like final word for everyone listening, you have so many tools and it can feel really overwhelming with all this information. And I think the big thing is keeping it simple. And also too, there's programs and resources to help guide you so you don't have to figure it out on your own and stay stuck. So don't be afraid to just get started and like start feeding your dogs a fresh food diet and use some of these resources to really help them.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll just recap for everybody. You can go get Dr. Katie's program, Better Gut Health, at her website, which is thenaturalpetdoctor.com. And then learn how to feed raw if that's where you want to go, DIYpethealth.com. And the code in your checkout is Dr. Katie, one word, KATIE. And then also, if you want to look at resources, Dr. Katie just mentioned, go check out online, Dog Microbiome magazine. It's a physical copy, but we make it digitally available for free. And get inspired. We have big article about glyphosate. We have articles about fecal transplants, all kinds of cool stuff, testing. I think you'll find it really informative. So thank you, Dr. Katie. This has been a really fun. We could have done easily 2 more hours, and we will.
It was great. Thanks for having me. And it was great to see you again, Ian.
You too. Thank you indeed.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. There'll be other parts with Dr. Katie. We're gonna go down deeper in a rabbit hole somewhere next time. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.